اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Can someone please give me a confirmation? اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Do you hear my voice? Yes, alhamdulillah. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على حبيب إله العالمين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، ولا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، إمام زماننا وولي نعمتنا الحجة بن الحسن المهدي فداه أرواح العالمين. اللهم كل وليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Welcome once again in this class where we discuss Irfan and the refutation to the science of Irfan, so to speak. So let's go ahead and share the screen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So a short yet a very important disclaimer that I have to make, because apparently there was a bit of confusion from the last session where some started questioning, do we accept this school of thought? Do we reject it and refuse it? And so what I think it's clear by now that we don't adopt Irfan and mysticism and Sufism, but I think we thought that we have to take the next step and refute this school of thought scientifically, and this is what we have been doing in the last two sessions. We want to see what Irfan says, what they believe in, and what their methodology is when it comes to pursuing awareness and knowledge. And the last session, what we did is we went through a brief summary of their methodology on one side and their beliefs on the other side. So we want to follow suit, and in these couple of sessions, we want to see what they actually say. Now, refutation and replying to their misconceptions will come afterwards. So put this into perspective so that you don't assume that we have adopted and accepted this school of thought. Without further ado, so in this session, we will explore the concept of what they call as mukashafa, or sometimes as al-kashf. They both give the same meaning. So what is kashf and why is it so important in this school of thought? Even though there's a lot of keywords, a lot of jargon that they use, but this is a key, a very important concept that we have to understand and analyze, inshallah, later on. So the connotation of kashf, the implication of kashf, if you like, basically what they mean when they say that through kashf you can gain cognition and awareness. And also we will analyze and explore their position, or if you like, their stance towards intellectual arguments and basically empirical and logical and generally speaking, the concepts that the mind adheres to. What is the mystic's stance and position towards this? So we're going to be discussing these two main points in this session, inshallah. First of all, kashf, mukashafa, what do they mean by this? And why does it carry a lot of weight in mysticism? And also, what do they think about the mind and the sciences and the intellectual facts that the majority of mankind accept as a means of pursuing truth? So number one, the meaning of kashf. We said in the last session that kashf basically means, or can be translated as, the truth being revealed to someone, as if the truth is behind the curtains of ignorance, and only through kashf you get to become aware of the truth. So, according to Irfan, the reality of existence. Why do we say the reality of existence? Because they say that we are in a, sometimes they call it a dream or hallucination, or what's the other word that they use? So basically, we're in an illusion. So they say that we cannot understand the truth and the reality of existence through rational inference, rather through kashf. Right? So if you want to know the truth, if you want to know the pure truth and the reality of existence, you have to go through kashf. So one says, and this is in Manazil al-Sa'irin, a book in mysticism, he says, kashf is the gaining, he says, it is gaining existential access to what is behind the veil. Now this word existential is important. They say that you have to go with yourself in another realm, as we mentioned in the previous session, and hence you can gain awareness. Qaysari, he's a proponent, a staunch proponent of the Irfani school of thought, and in fact he has commentated over the book of Fusus al-Hikam by Ibn Arabi. He says kashf in Arabic grammar, in the Arabic language, is basically removing the veil, right? So when we say, for example, a woman kashafat an niqabiha, she removes this veil from her face. That's kashf, right, in Arabic. But then he says, idiomatically, as in istilahan, what is meant in this science of Irfan, it means the becoming aware of what is behind the veil of the unseen. So what is behind the veil? He says, be it the meanings and the ma'nawiyat, so to speak, or the real matters, right? So you have to go there in order for you to get to see the truth. He says, whether it's through existence or witness. So it's either wujudan or mushahadatan. This is either metaphysical or imaginative. You either imagine the truth in this mushahada of yours, or you get to be the truth and be in the truth. We'll inshallah, we'll explain what they mean by all of this. So we just want to go through some excerpts of what they say. Ashtiani, again, one of the iconic figures in Irfan, he says the meaning of mukashafa and wahi. Now this is a point that is worth highlighting. He says we've got the term mukashafa, right? But then we have another term which we are all familiar with, which is al-wahi. So how do you translate, how do you describe wahi? It's the revelation, right? It's the revelation that is exclusive to the prophets and to the messengers. Now listen to what he says. He says mukashafa and wahi, they have common grounds and common meanings. But as for wahi, he says we use this term exclusively on who? on the prophets, on the Anbiya and the Mursaleen. Why do we do this? He says it's just a means of paying respect to the prophet. So if we want to distinguish between a prophet and that person who has actually been has gone behind the veils of the curtains of the truth, he too has revealed that the truth has been revealed on, the revelation has also been revealed upon, but we don't say it's wahi. Why? Out of mere respect to the prophets. In other words, these people, these arifs, right, these mystics, they also receive revelation. But why don't we call it wahi? It's just, paying respect to the prophets, just giving them a special title. Otherwise, it's the same. It's basically the same thing that both are being revealed to. Now, why is this important? Because we will understand and we will realize, according to what they say, right? We're not making things up. They say that prophethood has not come to an end. It can continue to be brought down on some people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Ibn Arabi himself says that I receive wahi. Now sometimes they don't use this word again because they want to keep the prophethood, keep a special place for prophethood. But then they say mukashafa and kashf is actually a means and a form of wahi. So that's Ashtiyani saying this. He says, then he goes on and saying the highest rank of mushahada, as in being aware of the truth. When you reach that rank, the mushahid is attracted to the core of collectiveness. Now, what is collectiveness? They say that other realm, as we mentioned before, and we can explain inshallah later on, there is no multiplicity in the beings. There is no distinction in the existences or existence, right? It's all but one reality. Sometimes they call it the unity of existence, and sometimes when they want to refer to what those mukashifs, the urafa, they see, they call it the alamul jam', as he mentions. So the core of collectiveness, or the combination of everything. Anyway, that's just some jargon. That's not very important to understand. So that's one. They say in order for you to acquire the truth, you have to go through the process of mukashafa or the kashf. So then you get to understand and become aware of reality. That's the first point we wanted to clarify here. The second point I think is a very important point, because we have to understand this in order for us to tackle their methodology. They say basically, and before I go through what they say, in essence, they say that the intellect has two problems. First of all, they say that the intellect has assumptions, right? If you want to utilize your mind and your thinking process, you might fall into mistakes, right? And so they say that if this is the case with the intellect, there has to be another way, another method, if you like, that doesn't make mistakes. So the intellect makes mistakes, these arguments, right? There is a lot of flaw when it comes to logical arguments, right? And so they say, because this is the case, we have to have another way that is infallible. It has to get you to the truth without any flaws in it. That's the first argument that they have. Now, is this right? Is it wrong? We have to discuss this later on. And also, if they say that the intellect makes mistakes, does mukashafa, right? How did we translate mukashafa? The revelation of the truth. Doesn't that also make mistakes? We have to explore this, and we have to see what they say in regards to mukashafa, because we know that there's so many opinions when it comes to what those people see. Many different opinions, right? You've got the Hindu or the Hindi or the Indian Sufis or the mystics, right? You've got the Sunni Sufis, you've got the so-called Shia Arifs, and they have different opinions. Like Ibn Arabi, right? He's a very important figure in Irfan, according to them. They say that, he actually says that I saw the Holy Prophet, in this world of the collectiveness or the world of Mukashafa, and I actually saw behind him was Abu Bakr, and behind Abu Bakr was Umar, and behind Umar was Uthman, and behind Uthman was Ali ibn Abi Talib. And so he sees these different things. Now, I would address a Shia mystic, and I would say, if this is an infallible channel, if this is an infallible means, how is it that the likes of Ibn Arabi, they see Abu Bakr better than Ali ibn Abi Talib? And then you come and telling me that no, I saw Ali is better than Abu Bakr in that realm. And another guy would say, I saw that there's nothing there, or everything is one, and that there is no God and His servants. There is no creator and creation. It's all but one, the unity of existence, wahdatul wujud. So there is some argument here, but anyway, that's one part of the argument. They say that the intellectual method makes mistakes. And the second problem with the intellect is that the intellect deals with what they call as the mahiyat. Mahiyat is translated as the essence of the creation, right? For example, you take this sibha, and if I ask you, what is this? If you ask me, I would say, well, this is a tasbih, right? If I take this smartphone and you ask me, what is it? I say, this is a smartphone. It's a mobile phone, right? They say this is the essence of things. There is another thing, which is the reality, the truth, is the existence of these things. So there is the mobile phone, and there is the existence of the mobile phone, right? Again, we're trying to analyze and explore what they say. We're not adopting, we're not accepting any of this. I just want to clarify certain things. So they say there is the essence and there is the existence. There is the mahiyya and there is the wujud, right? You've got the different realities, which we call the things. They say this is not the truth. The truth is the existence of all these things. The existence is but one. It's the elimination of all these different things. I'm so sorry if you're confused, but I have to go through this. I mean, we've been asked to teach this because we want to gain awareness on what they say in order for us to know the truth of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and try to distinguish the truth of the Ahlul Bayt from all the different schools of thought. Anyway, so they say the intellect, let's say it understands things correctly, but it understands, according to them, it understands the essence of things. It doesn't understand the existence of things. If you want to know the existence of things, you have to put aside the intellect, the intellectual arguments, the intellectual methodology of trying to pursue the truth, and you have to take the other approach, which is mukashafa, which is the approach of mysticism. If you go through that means, you will understand existence, not just the essence. And obviously, we have arguments in this regard. We have debates that we will discuss in the future, inshallah. So they say, where are we? Okay. So number 2, their position, the position of the mystics in regards or towards the intellect. The field which the mind can wander and roam, if you like, in the sphere of the intellect is what? Is not the existence or the wujud, rather the essence, or what they call as al-mahiyya. Mahiyya is extracted from the word ma huwa. Ma huwa, as in what is. So you tell ma hada, ma huwa, what is this? And I say it's tasbih, right? So our answers goes to the essence of things, not the existence of things. So they say one must transcend the intellect, go beyond the intellect to get and to reach the existence of things, not the essence of things, rather the existence of things. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And the only way, that's a mistake here, the only way is what? Is kashf, according to them. It is, now kashf is a phase or a realm or a sphere or a world beyond the world and the realm and the sphere and the phase of the intellect. So all that you discuss, all which you speak about, is that of the intellectual realm. It has nothing to do with the mukashafa. That's a totally different realm. Listen to Ibn Arabi. I've translated some of his sayings and quotes, one of which he says, "I'lam, beware that our knowledge and those of our companions," he says, "I'lam anna ilmana wa ilma ashabina." Our knowledge is different to your knowledge. So what do you know, right? You know this world. He says, my knowledge is different to yours. I know certain things that you don't. He says, our knowledge and my people's knowledge, as in the awliya, what they call themselves, the awliya, the urafa, the shamikhin, right? It's not from the way and the method of fikr and thinking. It's not like this. It's not like, you come sit down and think towards certain things so that you get to become aware of those things. He says, rather, it's from the divine flow, al-fayd al-ilahi. It's a direct connection with God, and God inspires us of the truth. What does that tell you? They are revealed upon. They have what we call wahi, which we ascribe to the prophets. But Ibn Arabi says, and that's in his book Kibrit al-Ahmar, he says, this is my knowledge. We have wahi, you don't. Interesting, isn't it? We have to see whether, according to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, this is something that is given to non-prophets. Is this possible? Now let's forget about what they say in their mukashafa and what they believe in, right? The misconceptions that they believe in, the wahdat al-wujud. When you claim that you have wahi, is this something that we can accept according to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam or not? So anyway, the process of thinking and logic is for those who haven't reached the truth. So you come and tell me that, with my intellect I say such and such, and I came to this conclusion with my aql. They say, hold on. This is what you're saying is in a world that is totally different to something that we're saying, because it's in a totally different world. So they say, Ibn Arabi also says, now that's some line of poetry I translated. He says, Al-aqlu afqaru khalqillah. The intellect is the poorest of God's creation, as opposed to what the mukashafa that they adopt or adhere to. He says, for it is thrown behind the thought, because the intellect, right, needs thinking. It needs fikr. The intellects are shackles, right? So he says this very clearly. He says the intellect, you're handcuffing yourself with the aql. And when you come and argue with me, you say, the aql says such and such. I'm saying, look, get rid of the aql. Get rid of the aql in order for you to understand the truth. He says that should you rely on this aql, you will lose. You'll become a loser. Khusran. Hence, understand what I am telling you, because this is a subtle reality that I want you to understand. Put aside the aql and come to me, and I'll tell you, the truth. It's funny, or rather it's sad. Anyway, so Sufis also believe that the intellect makes wrong conclusions, as we just mentioned. They say because it is tangled and intertwined, if you like, with assumptions, with erroneous ideas. They say that you cannot differentiate between correct intellectual conclusions and those of erroneous ideas. Because this is the case, then you have to put the aql aside and come to mukashafa. Again, this is something that we will debate and we will question. Is this right? Yes, we do have wrong opinions, but is this related to the aql, or the aql, according to Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, is light, is mere light, and if you surrender yourself to the aql, it leads you to nowhere but the truth, and to nowhere but to God's messengers and to the house of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. But according to the ulama, they say no, the aql makes mistakes, and hence you have to put it aside. Ibn Arabi also says that no knowledge except through kashf and shuhud. He says, La ilma illa ma kana min kashf. Don't come and tell me that your intellect is saying such and such, because I don't believe that the intellect gives you knowledge. The knowledge is elsewhere. Not in thinking and speculating and assuming. So he says that the aql is this. It's speculation, it's assumption, is wrong conclusions, which we will discuss and say this is not right. The aql is not the assumptions. The aql, the true aql, is pure truth. ما عبد به الرحمن اكتسب به الجنان. Rumi, another iconic figure in Irfan, he says in some lines of poetry, he says the foundations of the intellectual arguments are made from wood. So that's in Farsi. He says, something along these lines that istidlaliyan, paye istidlaliyan chubin bovad. He says that the very infrastructure of those who do intellectual arguments, the infrastructure is what? Is from wood, as opposed to metal and iron. And so wood is not very strong, and so it can break. And wood is prone to destruction. Therefore, every proof is in fact, as an intellectual proof, is in fact misleading. So you can see they're saying this very, very clearly, that the intellect is helpless. It's not, it doesn't get you anywhere, in reality and in truth. So they're trying to hit the pillars of the intellect. That's one of the very first things that they do. They say you have to remove the shackles and the curtain of the intellect. Right? So this is important. Why? Because if you remember, in the beginning we said that they say mukashafa is removing the curtains. And so what is the curtains? What are the curtains? They are the intellect. Whatever laws you know of, you have to eliminate, you have to remove, you have to dismiss. Ibn Arabi again, he says, Ibn Arabi is not a Shia, he's a Sunni, he's a Wahdatul Wujudi. He's got many erroneous ideas we will go through later on. He says our people, our companions, they don't use thinking for their knowledge, right? So similar to what he said in elsewhere, he says because it is not theoretical but divine. He says our knowledge is a divine knowledge. It's not theoretical. It's not like you have to argue and you have to think and you have to it's direct contact with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or so they claim. So he says thinking makes mistakes. Interesting. Just imagine how much Ahlul Bayt have encouraged us in putting effort in thinking. I remember once I had this lengthy lecture about the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and the importance of thinking. Imam al-Hasan al-Mushtaba alayhi salam, in a beautiful hadith, he says, "Usikum, I encourage you and I command you in doing two things. one, observing piety, and two, بكثرة التفكر, and constantly, continuously thinking and reflecting and pondering. For, the Imam says, فإن التفكر أبو كل خير وأمه. He says thinking is the father of all good and also the mother of all good, as a metaphor of that. If you want the source of good, the source of doing good, the source of understanding and becoming aware, you have to think. But the Urafa, right, in contrast, they say, no, 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 no. You have to put all of this aside and you have to come through mukashafa for you to understand. So they say you cannot depend on thinking. He says, my ashab. Then he explains, he says, by this word, my ashab, my companions, I mean the people of the hearts. Now this is something that we will discuss inshallah in the next session. They speak about ishq. You've heard this a lot, right? Ishq, ishq. So they say, we are the people of the hearts. We're not the people of the minds. The minds is for those limited people, of those who have constraints and do not have access to the real world. We are the people of the hearts. We're not the people of the brain and the intellect and the aql and tafakkur. And we are the people of the mushahadat. We witness. We realize the truth. We come to the truth. We have the mushahada and the mukashafa. We are the people of revelation. You come and tell me to learn the book? What book? What book? The Quran? We have direct access to Allah. This is for you people. You people who don't have access to Allah. You go learn the Quran. You go open the Quran. And I do have some quotes from Ibn Arabi. I haven't mentioned here, maybe in the future, that he says, my teacher once, he came inside and he saw there was a circle of students learning from their teacher, and he said, oh, poor people, masakeen, look how poor they are. They taking from the dead, as in the books. We take from the Hayy and the Qayyum. We take from God, the ever-living. And so if you come and tell me that go learn hadith, go learn the Quran, what are you doing? Why are you taking from the dead? Come and take it directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what does that tell you, my dear brothers and sisters? That tells you that you have to dismiss the teachings of Islam, basically, and you go and get your own understanding of Islam directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ala kulli hal. So then the mind could reject and refuse something. Okay, so if they say that you have to put everything aside, the intellectual theories aside, then they say that so I forgot to read this. He says, Ibn Arabi says, only through the means of haqiqah. This is a term they use that we have to discuss later on. What do they mean by haqiqah? I know we say it's the truth, but there is another connotation to it. They say that henceforth it is said, and this is a quote that they always use, that al-kashf طور وراء طور العقل. They say this mukashafa of ours is a reality that is beyond the reality of the intellect. If this is the case, then if you come and tell me that the intellect says that such and such is impossible, they say, yes, it's impossible in your limited realm, but if you come to ours, you will see that all these contradictions will become possible. So they say, so if the mind rejects and refuses to believe in something, they say that this is only according to you. But in our level, okay, the level of the kashf, it is very different. They say, in fact, sometimes it could be the exact opposite of what you believe in. Not what you assume, not what you speculate, not what you hypothesize, rather what you firmly believe as the truth. Like what? Like that I exist. Like that you are different to me. Like that oppression is wrong. Like that white is not black. Like that existence is the opposite of inexistence, right? We know all these laws, intellectual laws, right? But then they say, so they say that the realm of the mukashafa is beyond the intellect, and so for you limited people who don't have access to that world, you cannot come and say that I'm wrong because you don't have access to my realm. That's what they claim. And so they say you have to stop at your limits, and we believe in what we believe in because we are superior to you. What does that, by the way, brothers, remind you of? Trinity. I remember I had a debate. Maybe I shared this with you before. With this Christian, I was airborne, and this Christian Iranian man, he came to me and he said, "You're a Muslim?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I was a Muslim, now I'm an ex-Muslim and I've become Christian." And so we had this lengthy debate. It was a 10-hour, I think, flight or so. And so one of the arguments that I used, I said, look, the very basics of mathematics that every intellectual, rather every small kid understands, that 1 is 1 and 3 is 3, and 1 cannot be 3 and 3 cannot be 1, right? So 3 is more than 1. You cannot negate and neglect this very simple fact that 1 is not 3. He said, look, this is according to us. But God is something else. He can be 1, He can be 3. And I said, if this is the case, then every person can come forth and say, and bring their argument using the very same argument that you used, and saying that, this idol, I believe it's God. And if you say that it's not God, they say, why would you say it's not God? If you believe that God can become anything, He can become an idol. He can come and become personified, if you like, in this body, and we have to hence worship it, and this is my belief, and you don't have an intellectual argument to prove me wrong. And so this is what they say. The Arif, similarly, they say that these intellectual laws have to be put aside, and then we get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If He is everything, you have to accept it, even if that contradicts the very basics of the intellectual laws. Is this right? Of course not. Of course not. And we're going to debate this. According to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, you have to follow the footsteps of the aql in order for you to be guided. There is absolutely no hadith that says you can go against the aql, especially when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this existence. Ala kulli hal. So listen to this last paragraph here, and we will conclude with this. Inshallah, later on there is Samahat Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim will teach. Sayyid Ali, he apologized. He has a ill person, ill member of his family, and please do dua for all the mu'mineen, the sick mu'mineen, especially for this member of the family. Sayyid Ali apologized for this session. Inshallah, next week he can continue by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Amuli, he's a student of the school thought of Ibn Arabi, and he's alive in Qom, and he's a mystic, and this is what he says. So this is the exact verbatim, obviously translated, of his statements. He says the bottom line is that from the theoretical mind, right, the aqli perspective, he says a thing means the exact external self in the image, right, which is cause, not effect. Listen to this very carefully. He says, let's say God is the cause of everything else, right? So he's the cause. He's not the effect. He's not the product of himself. He's the cause. He says that is from an intellectual perspective. Listen to this very carefully. He says, however, this is very important because I've seen people from this school of thought, they question, they say, this is nonsense, we don't say this. Listen to what Amuli says, Hassan Zada Amuli. He says, however, based on this idea, as in Irfan, mukashafa, that is beyond the intellectual decrees and the intellectual laws, the decree as in the decree of Kashf and Shuhud, Mukashafa, he says the self, the that, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the combination of contradictions. Wow. He says God is the combination of the contradictions. And He is the combinator, if you like, of the dissimilarities. So you say that I am not God. Yes, that's according to your intellect. According to Mukashafa, you are God. Everything is God. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. But we have to understand what they say. We have to understand, as he called it, the bottom line of their beliefs and their methodologies and the outcome and the product of Irfan and mysticism and Mukashafa and Shuhud. I will stop here, and inshallah in the next session we will be speaking about love, or what they call as ashq. This is an important keyword that they use. What do they mean by this? And does it have any weight or not? Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you again for attending, and may all of you inshallah be in the du'as of Al-Imam Al-Mahdi Ajjallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. Wa akharu da'wana. Or let's see if we can just go through 2 or 3 questions, even though I concluded and I... So Anonymous says, I've heard that everything has a batin and a zahir. So there is the exterior of the things and the interior of the things. Look, even if there is such a thing, we don't say that the interior is contradicting to the exterior, because this is what the mystics say. They say the zahir is something, what you see is something, what is apparent is something. The truth is the opposite of all of this. How is it the opposite? Because again, what is apparent? Apparent is the distinction of things. Apparent is that I am the creation of God. Apparent is that I am doing what I am doing. It's me doing it. What they say is the essence and the truth and the interior is, this is all nonsense. This is all but assumptions of yours. This is all this matrix of yours that you've created. It's nothing of this kind, because it's only God, nothing else exists, and what you're doing is God doing it. Al-ayadu billah. And so there is no good, there is no bad, there is no vice, there is no... This is all nonsense according to them. So obviously this is not, even if we say that there is the zahir and the batin of things, that's not it. Okay, so a brother says, do they use this fallacy to reject any logical refutation? If so, how can one refute them? Look, they say that, or let's say they claim that we're not people of sophistry, right? We don't have fallacy. We have rather another approach of pursuing truth. That's what they say. But obviously we know that this is a fallacy. This is misconception. This is a form of sophistry. Now, how do we refute to them? We haven't touched on this yet. We just want to know what they say, right? We have a number of refutations that we will reply to them. And we will quote them, because if you say, well, you're doing it intellectually, no, we've got some of their confessions in regards to these different things that they mentioned, and hence we can refute, inshallah. And Anonymous says, Salam Sayyid, I once heard that the claim that Ibn Arabi was a Shia practicing taqiyya, hence him praising the Sahaba and so on and so forth. Okay, this nonsense because of a condition of taqiyya, or could this be a possibility? Look, Ibn Arabi, how should I put this? I want to be respectful towards those who have misunderstandings towards this. Look, we know who Ibn Arabi is, right? Ibn Arabi is a deviant person. Ibn Arabi is a person who says that Fir'aun was a good person, and I have quotes from him. Ibn Arabi is a person who says that that worshipping idols is worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Arabi is a person who says that Allah created everything while God is everything. Al-ayadu billah, astaghfirullah. This is all kufr. So you don't come and tell me and say, what does he think about, Imam Ali and Abu Bakr? And hey, he's got a problem in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's one. Then he's got a problem in prophethood, in nubuwwah, in wahy. He claims that he's a prophet. Even though he doesn't say, I'm a prophet, he says, wahy comes to me. He says, I have reached the level of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I was given everything that Rasulullah was given. Then Ibn Arabi, and he says this in numerous books. Look, I know what they say, right? I know how they want to justify this. And this is sometimes what they say. By the way, there's a good book by the from the author, Rahmatullah alayhi Sayyid Ja'far Murtada al-Amili. It's in Arabic, maybe you can look it up on Google. He says, the title of the book is Ibn Arabi, Sunniyun Muta'assib. He says Ibn Arabi, that's the title of the book, is a staunch, is a Sunni who is against the Shias. And he quotes the statements of Ibn Arabi, by one of which he says that he met with someone who saw the Shias in their true face and he saw them as pigs. Brother, don't come and tell me he was doing taqiyya. Look what he says. Look how he says it. We know taqiyya. We know how the approach is done, right? This is not taqiyya. Ala kulli hal. One last question we'll go through, and I apologize for those of you who I didn't go through their questions. So are people who believe in this type of Irfan, look, that's something that we have to discuss. That is every person who has misunderstood truth, can we consider them as kuffar, as infidels, as, murtaddeen? Of course not. Of course not. There are some people who understand the truth, yet they reject it. There are others who there are misconceptions that have led them towards not understanding the truth. Obviously, we cannot put them in one scale, right? Those who, if you inform them, if you tell them the truth, they accept it. And those who know the truth, and I have a lot of examples of those people, they know the truth, but they refuse it, they reject it. They say, we want to say this, we want to believe in this. Ala kulli hal. Okay, inshallah, in a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes or so, Samahat Sayyid Muhammad Kalam will start his session. Jazakumullah khair once again. Wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.